I had never been one for drama. My wife and I had moved to Evergreen Hills precisely because it was quiet, well-kept, and predictable. The homes were cookie-cutter perfect, the lawns manicured within an inch of their lives, and the streets safe enough for kids to ride their bikes until sundown. But as I would come to find out, paradise often has a gatekeeper, and ours was named Karen. Karen Whitmore, president of the Evergreen Hills HOA, self-appointed guardian of community standards, and an absolute nightmare wrapped in pearls and tennis skirts. We clashed before, of course. She didn't like that I had painted my shutters an off-white that clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. She left anonymous notes in my mailbox if my garbage bins were out 5 minutes past pickup. One time she even reported us for having a bird feeder she claimed attracted undesirable wildlife, by which she meant squirrels. But I never imagined just how far she was willing to go. Until the barbecue. It was supposed to be a simple family gathering. My younger brother, Mateo, had just come home from overseas deployment. After 2 years in Kuwait, our family wanted to welcome him home with all the warmth we could muster: grilled ribs, corn on the cob, lemonade, music, laughter, and lawn chairs. We invited close friends, neighbors, a few of Mateo's old high school buddies. About 20 people total. We made sure to keep everything within reason. No loud music, no parking violations, no open flames outside of our backyard grill. I even double-checked the HOA handbook. Nothing prohibited backyard cookouts on private property. It was all above board. But as soon as we started setting up that morning, popping up the canopy, arranging the coolers, Karen appeared at the edge of her driveway, arms folded like some suburban gargoyle. Her face twisted into a sour knot as she marched over in her usual brisk cadence, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Bellamy," she said, looking past me at the folding tables being arranged. "Do you have a permit for this event?" "It's a family barbecue, Karen," I said calmly, used to her tone by now. "Private gathering. On our property." She pursed her lips so tightly I thought they might disappear into her face. "Well, as HOA president, I feel obligated to remind you of Section 8.3 of the Community Ordinance. No disturbances or events that may disrupt the peace and aesthetic cohesion of Evergreen Hills." I smiled. "And I feel obligated to remind you it's Saturday, and we're having lunch." She didn't reply, only squinted at me for a few seconds as if daring me to push her further. Then she huffed and turned back toward her fortress of azaleas. I should have taken that as a warning shot. The barbecue started around noon. The weather was perfect, warm but breezy, the scent of mesquite smoke curling into the sky. Kids splashed in the inflatable pool we set up, adults mingled over beer and burgers, and my brother looked like he was finally relaxing. People laughed, music played softly from a Bluetooth speaker, and for a few precious hours, the world felt right. But every now and then, I'd see Karen, peeking through her blinds, standing at her window, taking photos with her phone. She wasn't subtle. At one point, I saw her pointing a decibel meter at our yard from across the street. Around 2 p.m., a patrol car slowly rolled down the street and parked nearby. A cop got out, walked up to me, and, with a bored look, said, "We got a call about a noise complaint." I gestured to the scene. Families eating, kids playing quietly, music barely louder than a whisper. He shrugged. "Doesn't seem like a problem. Just keep it down, all right?" I nodded. "No problem, officer." He left, and the party went on. But Karen wasn't done. Another hour passed. Then 2. We were cleaning up dessert plates when we heard the low thrum of more engines. At first I thought it was more guests arriving late, but then I saw them, a black SWAT van followed by 2 squad cars rolling up the street. My heart dropped. They stopped directly in front of our house. Officers in tactical gear, helmets, rifles, body armor, poured out and spread in formation. The neighborhood fell silent. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. One officer boomed over a loudspeaker. "Residents of 1187 Meadowbrook Drive, step outside with your hands visible." Panic erupted. People screamed. Kids cried. My wife dropped her lemonade glass, and it shattered across the patio. Mateo instinctively reached to shield our grandmother. I held my hands up, confused and stunned. "There's a mistake. This is a barbecue. What the hell is going on?" They moved in fast, clearing the backyard, shouting conflicting instructions. My elderly aunt was told to sit on the curb with her hands on her head. An officer ordered my brother to lie face down in the grass, ignoring the fact that he still wore his army fatigue jacket. One neighbor was zip-tied because he instinctively reached into his pocket for his phone. The grill was kicked over. Smoke wafted from the coals like some ironic war signal. Plates of ribs and potato salad spilled into the lawn. Our dog was barking hysterically from inside the house. The entire neighborhood stood gawking, cell phones out, stunned into disbelief. I kept asking, yelling, what was the reason? What was the charge? Finally, one of the officers pulled me aside. We got a report of a domestic disturbance with weapons involved. Caller stated there were individuals brandishing firearms, threatening residents, and that it might be gang-related. My jaw dropped. That's insane. That's a lot. They looked at me with mild sympathy, but offered nothing more. We have to respond seriously when weapons are involved. And that was when I saw her. Karen, standing calmly at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed, watching it all like a queen overseeing a siege. She wasn't scared. She wasn't surprised. She was satisfied. That's when it hit me. She did this. She called in a false report, knowing full well it would provoke a violent, unnecessary response. And for what? Because we grilled ribs and played earth, wind, and fire on a Saturday afternoon? Eventually, the officers stood down. No weapons were found. No charges were made. We were told to submit a complaint if we felt our rights had been violated. The SWAT team packed up. Neighbors helped us pick up the mess. Kids still cried, afraid of the helmets and guns. The party was over. That night, my brother said quietly, I've been through firefights in real war zones, and even I panicked. I looked at my wife, who was still shaken, her hands trembling as she folded towels. I thought of our guests, terrified and humiliated, of our daughter, who kept asking why the army people yelled at her uncle, of how our backyard had turned into a war zone because a bitter woman couldn't stand not being in control. And I decided I wasn't going to let it go. I stayed up late, researching. I pulled the police report, filed a FOIA request, found that the 911 call had come from Karen's house. The report showed clear exaggeration, lies about visible firearms and gang threats. I started talking to lawyers. I documented everything. Photos, video footage, statement from guests and neighbors, a history of Karen's harassment. I began building a case not just for damages, but for accountability. This wasn't just about a ruined afternoon. This was about false reporting, public endangerment, emotional distress, and property damage. It was about justice, and I was ready to take her down. The aftermath of that day clung to us like smoke in a jacket, invisible at times, but always there. For the first few days, I thought maybe the sting would fade, that people would move on, chalk it up as some freak incident, a misunderstanding. But Evergreen Hills wasn't the kind of place that let things quietly disappear. The SWAT incident was the talk of the entire community. People whispered when we walked our dog. Some of our neighbors offered condolences or support, while others just looked away awkwardly, unsure what to say. A few, the kind who had always towed Karen's line, acted like we had brought the mess upon ourselves. That somehow, by having the audacity to host a barbecue, we had invited tactical officers into our backyard. The worst part? Karen played the innocent victim card like a seasoned actress. She posted a lengthy Facebook rant in the Evergreen Hills community group the day after the raid. It was filled with vague insinuations. We must prioritize safety. We cannot ignore suspicious behavior in our neighborhood. It's unfortunate, but I acted in what I believed was the best interest of our community. She didn't name me directly, but everyone knew. The likes and sympathetic comments from her usual cronies made me sick. Meanwhile, my daughter wouldn't go in the backyard anymore. She'd peek through the curtains, scared that army people would come back. My brother Mateo, a decorated soldier who'd survived mortar attacks in the desert, now had trouble sleeping in his childhood bed because the sound of slamming doors made him flinch. My wife took 2 days off work because she kept replaying the scene, convinced she had done something wrong. That kind of trauma doesn't just blow over. I knew then that filing a complaint with the HOA or the local police wouldn't cut it. Karen had escalated this into something life-altering, and she needed to be held responsible in a way that would actually matter. That's when I called my old college friend, Malcolm Torres. He was a civil rights attorney in the city, tough as nails and well-connected. After hearing everything, watching the body cam footage we'd obtained, reading the 911 transcript, reviewing Karen's long pattern of HOA bullying, his response was immediate. "You're not just suing her," he said. "You're making an example out of her." We filed a lawsuit within 2 weeks. The claim? Intentional infliction of emotional distress, false reporting of a crime, public endangerment, and defamation. We were seeking $2 million in damages, not because we expected every penny, but because Karen needed to feel in her bones. This wasn't just about money. It was about making her understand that this suburban dictatorship of hers had crossed a line. We also filed for a restraining order, barring her from any contact with our family pending trial. The legal paperwork hit her doorstep like a thunderclap. I heard from one of her neighbors that she nearly fainted when she saw her name on the court summons. Her online presence went silent for a few days. Then the next week, she popped back up, this time with a defensive, trembling video post about being targeted for simply doing my duty as HOA president. But it was too late. The court of public opinion was shifting. People began posting anonymously in the community group, sharing their own run-ins with Karen. Someone mentioned how she reported a neighbor's autistic son for wandering outside unsupervised. Another claimed she called animal control on their elderly golden retriever for aggressive barking. A retired veteran confessed that Karen had once demanded he remove his American flag because it violated uniform decor. Suddenly, the queen bee of Evergreen Hills was looking less like a vigilant protector and more like a tyrant with a clipboard. As discovery began, things got worse for Karen. We uncovered that she had made 7 prior calls to the police on various neighbors in the last 3 years. Each one exaggerated or completely fabricated. None resulted in arrests. She had a pattern, and it was finally being exposed. During depositions, she was combative and defensive. She claimed she'd seen suspicious individuals in gang attire at my barbecue. When asked to describe them, she faltered. Well, they had tattoos, and there was loud music. Malcolm leaned in and asked, "Do you realize it's not a crime?" She shifted uncomfortably. I was scared for the neighborhood, but not scared enough to warn others. Just scared enough to call in a fake gun threat. I didn't say it was fake, but it was. She fumbled with her words. By the end of the session, even her own attorney looked deflated. Media attention started picking up steam. First, a local news outlet covered it. Homeowner sued HOA president after SWAT team called on family barbecue. Then regional media picked it up. Then a popular YouTuber made a reaction video. Overnight, we became the poster family for what happens when HOA power goes unchecked. We weren't just suing Karen. We were standing up to every petty suburban overlord who had ever abused their authority. Karen's house was egged one night. I didn't condone it, but I couldn't help noting the irony. Now she knew what it felt like to be targeted. Meanwhile, the HOA board panicked. An emergency meeting was held, and a vote to suspend Karen's presidency passed by a narrow margin. She tried to fight it, of course, crying about character assassination and coordinated harassment, but her grip was slipping. Public opinion had turned. My neighbors began stopping me on the street to thank me. One said, "We were all scared to stand up to her, until you did." Another left a note on my door with a $100 gift card and the words, "For legal fees. Please win." Every inch of support hardened my resolve. By the time we got to the pre-trial mediation, Karen's team was desperate to settle. They offered $100,000 and a written apology. We refused. "She needs to face a jury," I told Malcolm. And so we pushed forward. Court was set for 6 months out, but the momentum didn't slow. My wife testified in a pretrial affidavit about the emotional toll, the trauma our daughter faced, the therapy appointments we'd had to book. Mateo gave a heartfelt statement about what it felt like to be treated like a criminal in the very country he'd served. I provided video evidence, neighbors' footage, doorbell cams, even the recording of Karen measuring the volume from her yard. It was an airtight case, and everyone knew it. As for Karen, her defense strategy waffled between "I was trying to help" and "I don't remember." But the 911 call transcript buried her. Her words were clear. "I see several men with what I believe are weapons. They're threatening each other. Please send help fast." It was complete fiction, and it had resulted in a fully armed SWAT response. At the final pretrial hearing, the judge scolded Karen's attorneys for not advising her against making such reckless claims. He even suggested that the case could lead to criminal charges for false reporting. That was the breaking point. 3 weeks before the trial, Karen's legal team returned with a new offer, a $1.2 million settlement, her permanent resignation from the HOA, and a written public apology. Malcolm turned to me and said, "This is victory if you want it." I thought about it, about the damage done, about the money we'd spent and the therapy bills and the months of stress. I thought about the message it would send, and I nodded. Let's take it. The day the settlement check cleared, I didn't feel victorious, not at first. I expected a rush, maybe some kind of internal celebration. Instead, I felt a strange stillness, like the dust had just settled after a long, exhausting battle. The fight with Karen had dominated every corner of our lives for months, and now that it was over, $1.2 million awarded, her HOA presidency dissolved, her public apology posted for all to see, I wasn't sure what to feel. I sat in the backyard that morning, coffee in hand, the same patch of grass where the SWAT team had screamed at my daughter and zip-tied my brother. But it was peaceful now, quiet, the sounds of birds chirping, a lawnmower a few houses down, the breeze rustling the fence line. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to watch my back. Karen's apology was posted online, per the settlement terms, and it was hard to read. Not because of guilt, but because of how much she clearly hated having to say it. It began stiffly, full of legal language, but halfway through she dropped the act and simply said, "I made assumptions. I let my personal biases cloud my judgment, and I took actions that endangered a family, a community, and myself. I'm deeply sorry for the trauma I caused. I will no longer participate in the Evergreen Hills Homeowners Association, and I commit to reflecting on the damage I've done." It wasn't poetic, but it was honest, and it was public. Within hours, the post had hundreds of comments, most from people in the neighborhood, but some from complete strangers around the country who had followed our story. Some praised her for owning up. Others tore her apart. Some just expressed shock that someone like her had finally faced consequences. We used a portion of the settlement to pay off our legal fees. Not cheap, but worth every cent. Malcolm refused a portion of his fee, saying, "This one wasn't just business. This one was personal." We sent him a giant smoked brisket and 2 bottles of top-shelf whiskey anyway. He deserved more than we could ever pay. We also used part of the money for therapy sessions for our daughter. The trauma from the raid had taken root deep inside her. Loud noises still startled her. For weeks she'd ask if the scary police guys were coming back. But slowly, with the help of a kind counselor and a stable home, she began healing. She played in the backyard again. She even asked when we'd have another barbecue. That one hit me right in the heart. So we did. About 2 months after the settlement, we threw another barbecue. Same yard, same canopy, same grill. But this time, it wasn't just a celebration for us. It was for everyone who'd ever felt powerless under the thumb of someone like Karen. The turnout was huge. Neighbors brought side dishes. Someone brought a bouncy house. Kids ran freely. Adults mingled and laughed and passed around plates like it was Thanksgiving. Mateo, now applying to become a firefighter, gave a toast and joked, "Let's hope we don't get flashbanged this time." People laughed, not awkwardly but freely, because we'd taken back what was ours. And this time, there was no clipboard, no measuring tape, no decibel meter from across the street. Karen had moved out. The house that once stood like a sentry post now sat empty, its blinds drawn and "for sale" sign planted awkwardly in the manicured front lawn. According to rumor, she was relocating to another suburb 2 towns over. No HOA leadership roles this time. Just another quiet house in another quiet neighborhood. Some felt bad for her. Some said she'd brought it on herself. I didn't care either way. What mattered was what came next. I was approached that same week by several members of the HOA board. They wanted to clean house, change the rules, become more transparent, and they asked me to help draft the new bylaws. I laughed at first. The idea of going from HOA target to board advisor was absurd. But after some thought, I agreed, on the condition that all bylaws be community approved and that no single person ever wield that kind of unchecked power again. We started holding open meetings, real ones, with snacks and coffee and discussion instead of threats and citations. People showed up. People actually talked. A neighborhood that once felt like a pressure cooker was beginning to breathe again. The settlement money also allowed us to do something we'd been putting off for years: start a foundation. My wife and I used a portion to create the Backyard Justice Fund, an organization dedicated to helping people take legal action against abusive HOAs and neighborhood harassment. We offered grants for legal aid, trauma therapy, and homeowner advocacy. It started small, one case, then 3. But it grew fast. Turns out, our story wasn't unique. We got letters, hundreds of them, from families in Oregon, Texas, Florida, all with stories of abusive HOA leaders who used fines, threats, or false reports to control or punish. One letter was from a single mom who had been fined $500 for hanging her kids' drawings on the front window. Another came from an elderly couple evicted after refusing to replace their fence on time. We gave them resources. We told them they weren't alone. We told them to fight back. As for my personal life, things finally settled into a new rhythm. I got a promotion at work. My boss said I handled the chaos with grace under fire. My wife started her own blog about HOA abuse and neighborhood reform. It took off like wildfire. Mateo officially joined the fire department. Our daughter started drawing pictures of smiling firefighters in backyards with balloons again. It wasn't just healing. It was rebirth. And yes, we kept hosting BBQs. Every few months, we'd fire up the grill and invite the whole block. It became a tradition. People would bring dishes named after parts of our journey. Legal slaw, Karen's kicked out kebabs, SWAT-free sausages. It was cathartic. It was community. It was the way life should have always been. And sometimes, when the sun was just right, I'd sit in my favorite patio chair, sipping a cold drink, and watch my daughter chase the dog across the yard, and I'd think. It all started with a barbecue. What Karen meant to ruin, what she meant to use as a weapon, became our rallying point. Our spark. She had called in the cavalry, hoping to scare us into submission. But all she did was ignite something much bigger than herself. In the end, her empire crumbled not with a bang, but with a grill, some courage, and a lawyer named Malcolm. And if I had to do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing.